Hey, Don, I got Veronica Williams and Bridget Brooks here. We'll go ahead and start letting people in if you're cool with that.
Okay. I'll turn off my music. Let them in away.
Welcome, Counselor Brooks. Welcome, Ms. Williams. Budget Chair Williams. Oh, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Oh, I'm on mute. There we go. I said fancy title.
Ah, yes. You hold all the power tonight.
I got all the power.
Welcome, Megan. Welcome, Clay. Can you hear us? Welcome, Stacy. Welcome, Sherilyn. Welcome, Becky.
Hello. I'm getting over a cold, so I'm going to stop my video and my audio so you don't have to see me blowing my nose, but I am paying attention.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Everyone wins.
Welcome, Tom and Rich and Chris, Jerry Ann, Julie. Welcome, Kim, Jeff, and Courtney. We're going to have a lovely day this evening. Yes. Beautiful day in the neighborhood. Welcome, Counselor Sacco. Welcome, Lisa.
Faith is our Walmart greeter.
Don't make me ask you to leave, sir.
Please. No. I sent you my presentation. You can do it for me.
I'm sure I would do such a good job.
Hey, Dawn, this is Maria.
Hey, Maria.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm gonna be here. I'm just gonna have dinner, and so I'm gonna take myself away from the camera, but I'm here.
You bring me some dinner too?
Sure. Bates, can you please give them dinner?
Yes. DoorDash delivers to you, right, Dawn?
Right. Okay, so I'm just letting you know that I'm here. I'm just gonna be off camera.
Okay, thank you. Enjoy your dinner.
Thank you.
Welcome, Sean. Terrence.
I feel like I have ears.
Bike ears, huh?
You're at Disney.
I assume we're going to continue to wait until a few more people are on. Is that,
Yeah, I'm just trying to check through here to see if.
well, I don't see the mayor and I don't see council president, and I think we're missing, unless they've come in and we're missing a few members of the budget committee.
Mayor's on his way in right now.
And we're missing Counselor Pratt.
No, she's on.
He's here.
Oh, we miss her. And committee member Bikeman.
I know this thing by Zoom and then having to go across different screens, it really
Oh, I just
messes
go
up.
to I go to the participants list. It's a lot easier.
Oh, that's true.
It's just that people bounce around sometimes because you come in and you end up at the bottom and then you flip up to wherever you belong in the alphabet, but
As long as I have a clear roll call of who's here when the meeting starts for the
okay,
minutes, that would be helpful.
we could do that.
And if we could avoid staff, no offense to staff, it makes it difficult. I just need the committee members.
That's fine. Do you want me to go ahead and start?
Sure, why don't we go ahead and get started?
Great. This is Veronica Williams. I am the chair of the Budget Committee for the City of Tualatin, and I am calling our Budget Committee meeting to order. To be helpful, if I could ask city leadership to please note that you're here. We'll start with the mayor.
Present.
Is Council President Grimes with us yet? Councilmember Reyes,
Present.
Councilmember Sacco,
Here.
Councilmember Brooks,
Here.
Councilmember Hillier,
Here.
and Councilmember Pratt.
Present.
And then the Budget Committee, Monique Beekman, Chris Brune,
Here.
Rebecca Deal.
I'm here.
Oh, great. John Hannan.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Kelly Horsford,
I'm here.
Brittany Valley,
Present.
and I'm Veronica Williams, so I'm here. So I think we're just missing 2 people as of right now.
And Madam Chair, also with us this evening, just so I could introduce to the rest of them, we have all our executive team members, as well as managers and others that have worked on the budget. So the people you'll see, I won't go through each one of them, but there's a number of people of staff on the meeting tonight that worked very hard in getting the budget that you have in front of you together. And I thank them for all their work because it makes my job easier to present it to all of you. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you, and we welcome them also. I believe you were going to put our agenda up for us.
Yeah, I
John?
could share that quickly so we can see that. So hopefully everybody can see the agenda.
There we go. So the first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes of the May 10th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as they were distributed? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes of the May 10th meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes? Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Who was
Aye.
the second? Can you state your name?
Sure, that was John Hannum.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the minutes have been approved and seconded. I will now, I believe I need to open the public hearing on state revenue sharing and turn it over to Don.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now I'll go back to sharing my screen. Okay, so we are here for a public hearing on our state shared revenues, which is a portion of our liquor taxes. Oregon Revised Statutes 221.770 requires 2 public hearings in order to receive our apportionment of that share of the liquor taxes. The first is before the Budget Committee this evening, and that's on our possible uses of the funds. The next one will be in front of the City Council on June 12th, and that is on the proposed use of the funds. We are estimated to receive $413,890 in fiscal year 21-22. These revenues are not restricted and they are programmed into the budget for general city operations. Cigarette taxes, marijuana taxes, gas taxes, and the other portion of our liquor taxes are not covered under this public hearing. That I'll turn it back over. Madam Chair, there's no action that is needed by the committee this evening. Just the opportunity for anybody to make any comments about these possible uses of funds.
Thank you. So we are open for comment on possible uses of these funds as part of state revenue sharing. Any comments? I'm hearing none. I believe I can close this portion of the hearing. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, and then I'm going to ask Don to cover the questions that came up either from or since the meeting of May 10th on the budget as it has been presented.
Thank you. Those of you that saw your email about 2 hours ago, I sent out the complete listing of the questions and answers of all the questions I received, as well as the funds I'm going to go over this evening. A number of the questions were covered or will be covered under the presentation that I will go through here in a little bit. But the ones that I want to talk about a little bit before we get into that, the ones that aren't part of the presentation, I'll go through right now, and feel free to ask any other questions as we go along, either during this part or during the rest of the presentation. The first question was regarding the other revenue under all our funds. And the question was why the other revenue category, kind of miscellaneous revenue line, had such a large budget decrease. And that there was about a $4 million plus budget decrease. And that was due to the Tualatin Service Center loan that we took out during this fiscal year, and it was in a line item in 2021, and therefore is a one-time other revenue, and so not showing going forward. There were a couple questions on the Tigard Road utility fees and user charges in the sewer fund. It says user charges Tigard, and that does cause a little bit of confusion why we are collecting any revenues and passing on any fees related to Tigard. And the answer to that is part of Bridgeport Village is actually within the city limits of Tigard, the theater and a little stretch there. And so those buildings are subject to Tigard's road utility fee, of which we bill that whole shopping center. We bill all utilities for that. So we bill that account for the Tigard road utility fee. And then on the sewer side, again, those are the sewer charges and stormwater charges related to that account get allocated towards Tigard's fees, and we pass those on to Clean Water Services under the Tigard window and umbrella. Next question that came up was regarding conferences and meetings for the council, and it was not one of the members did not see that line item. And it's actually, if we look in the city council budget, you'll see conferences and meeting mayor, then it says membership fees, and then conferences and meetings council. Why, I'm not sure why those are separate. I think it may have been in our new setup, but we split out the mayor and the council conferences and meetings a few years ago. And so those are in separate line items. They are in the city council budget. There are some actual expenditures in the last 2 years in just the conferences and meetings accounts, and that's just a miscoding that should have gone to one or the other. Another question came up about what items are in the Parks and Recreation budget under donations outside agency. And there's a portion of it, I'll talk about that a little bit, but there's a few different pieces. It's the city's contribution to the Crawfish Festival. It's the Heritage Center rentals that we pass through the Tualatin Historical Society. And then we have 2 contributions in that account, one to the Historical Society and then one to the Tualatin Youth Basketball. Next, there were a number of questions regarding the Parks Development Fund, kind of why the beginning balance is so different, why there's a fund balance change of roughly 1.1 million. What's that big source of the fees and charges? The biggest part of that is a couple of years ago, we anticipated the RV Park of Portland, the old RV Park of Portland site. It's going to be developed into a multi-family residential complex. We thought the system development charges were going to come in at the end of fiscal year 20. They did not. They were going to carry over into the summer months of 20. Then it's been put on hold. We anticipate it's going to start back up here soon, but it's based upon the timing of when we thought those fees were going to come in. We thought they were going to come in 20, so we had them as part of the 2021 beginning fund balance, but they weren't actually. So now if you look at the 21-22 beginning balance, it's really low again, and beginning is because those revenues did not come in. So it was a timing situation of when we received and when we anticipated to receive those revenues, and it's primarily towards that one project. There was some questions on an update kind of on the Ice Age Tonkin Trail related to in the CIP. It talks about some funding in the beginning of that project in 21-22. If you look at the CIP, and that was a question that came up a couple times as well, the CIP is a planning document, and it kind of gives guidance towards the individual fiscal years where we think something's going to start and a project may start. Now, this CIP was created a couple of years ago, so it's even it's a little old, so to speak, old. But we put our best guess at that time when projects might start. And then we get into the budget process, and things happen, and we determine when projects really will start and the timing of when we actually put something into the budget. And so the CIP is a guiding document to help drive the budgets and help plan, but you may see things that will be in one column for funding in 1 year that doesn't actually happen for 2 or 3 years beyond that. And it's just the timing of the 2 documents. On the Ice Age Tonkin Trail, there is regional discussions that are still happening. There won't be any city funds put towards that at this point in 21-22. Metro, we are working with Metro to be looking at purchasing some easements and some land rights, but that'll all be through Metro. It won't be through city funds. So that's why you're not seeing anything in 21-22 in the city budget, even though the CIP a couple years ago thought that there might be something coming forward. And then in that same fund, the decrease in studies and an increase in projects professional services, that's based upon the Basalt Creek Parks planning. We're working with a consultant to help us with planning of parks in the Basalt Creek area. That is a 2-year project. So we had more of the dollars budgeted in that line in the professional services line for that going in this fiscal year, less in next fiscal year. That's why the drop there. But then we have professional services for design of the Tualatin River Greenway Trail extension under Highway 99. That is part of that fund. And we'll talk a little bit more later this evening. I have an amendment based upon that project as well that I'll propose this evening. A couple other items related to CIP type things. and Transportation Development Tax Fund. Question came up that it has nearly $12 million of contingency with very little yearly spend over the last several years. What major projects are targeted at this, as this fund does not appear to be described in this goal? The only projects that are planned in the fiscal year 21-22 are the ones that are listed in the goals in that fund. We collect TDT, Transportation Development Tax, or TDT, on development, and it's spent on growth projects or projects that are related to growth. Very similar to some other funding sources we have in the city, where we'll build up funds until a project is ready to be constructed. And at the timing of when a project may be eligible for TDT funds, because those are restricted to growth related activities. So it's not uncommon to build those up and then have projects in the future. The projects you do see in that fund this year have a portion of them that are growth eligible, and that's why those are budgeted, and the rest will be funded, projects in the future funded that are growth related. Talked a little bit about the CIP already. On page 207, this is the last page of the CIP section. Question was, there was someone that was asking about trying to understand what the totals for each fiscal year represented compared to the items listed. The projects on that page are funds or projects that would be substantially or completely funded from outside sources, such as clean water services. So a number of the projects on there are sewer related projects that a major portion, if not all, of the funding will be from clean water services. And when that funding is available, we'll do that project. So those are all the projects that are related to outside source funding for a majority or complete funding. And the last was on the Tualatin Development Commission Administration Fund and the consultants, about $400,000. What the consultants be doing? We are using, the Tualatin Development Commission is looking at two potential new urban renewal districts. And so we have consultants on board that are experts in urban renewal that are helping to put together the documents and the financial package that needs to be done per state law related to that. So it's consultants to help us guide us through the processes of creating new urban renewal districts. And then last, I just have one correction that is in the document I sent out to you. The printing and postage and non-departmental, and when I get to that screen on another part, I identified it in my written response as related to the newsletter. That's in another line item. The increase in postage, printing and postage and non-departmental general fund is related to the Tualatin Moving Forward annual report, not the newsletter. And I'll identify the newsletter increase when we get to that part in my presentation. Those were the questions that I had this evening that were not part of the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any right now, or when we get to the end, if there's others that did not get answered, I can take questions at that point. So if I don't, I'll give a minute. If you have a question, let me know right now, or else we'll move on to the next part of the evening. Hearing none and not being able to see everybody, I will continue on my next slide here. I'm trying to get as many people as I can on my other screen. So, okay, there we go. So the funds we're going to discuss this evening, we'll start with we're going to discuss the general fund, and these 14 budgets are part of the general fund. And you see the pages here. There are 3 sections of the budget document. There's the fund summary section, and I won't spend a lot of time there. We've got the revenue section and then the expenditure section. When I go through the rest of the presentation, I'll start with revenues and then we'll move into the expenditures. But the general fund, these are the pages that I'll be talking about. And I've set up the presentation to try to go in order as much as possible, so that if you are flipping through and trying to follow along, and I'll try to stay slow enough that if you're flipping pages, you have the opportunity to get to that page before I start moving on. I've tried to stay where I go full in order without having to go back. There is one part, and I'll point that out, where we have to actually go back in your binder, and I apologize for that. The other funds that we're going to talk about this evening are the building fund, the road utility and road operating funds, the new parks utility fund. We have both our bond funds, general obligation, and our enterprise bond funds. The transportation projects fund, that's our Tualatin Moving Forward program. The Tualatin City Services Building Fund, and then the water, sewer, and stormwater operating funds. And again, a lot of pages here. If you didn't get a chance to see your email, I did send this out. I apologize for being so late. By the time I got all the documents and questions answered, that together when I was able to get that out to you. So there are some common themes that I want to bring up now, because I won't go through them in each individual budget. One is the performance measures, and there were some questions on the performance measures. As I mentioned before, this is something new that we did this year based upon the Government Finance Officers Association Award Program. This was the first year, so there's some that I'm sure will change, and each year we will continue to look at this. Departments did a great job of putting together performance measures for the first time doing this. There are some that will be ongoing, and every year the fairly routine type of performance measures that will, are going to be a output-based thing every year. There are some that are short-term, that we know that there are projects that or items that may be going on right now that maybe for the next couple of years will be happening, and then it may not. It may kind of go away. One is our conversion to LED lights in our street lights. At some point, they're all going to be converted, and that won't be a performance measure anymore. So that one will go away. And so there's different types of those things that are intermixed throughout the document. And we will look at this again after this year and see where things need to change as we start tracking stuff, and it'll be a fluid process. The personal services expenditures, you'll see that generally is going up in all areas that have personnel based upon cost of living increases, step increases, contractual obligations. There's where our benefits are, our health and dental, our PERS benefits. So you'll see all those generally going up. There are some that might be changing, or we have a couple that are decreasing, and that happens when we have staff turnover. Someone may be at a higher step when they leave. We hire someone new, they come in at a lower step. Obviously, the salaries and benefits are lower for that new person. And so you'll see there's not an even percentage across all those because of the different nuances that may occur. In a couple different areas, we have expenditures related to replacement items. So personal computer and laptops and information services, as well as in a few of the public works budgets, we have small tools identified. Those are all on replacement schedules. And so from year to year, you'll see different amounts based upon which pieces of equipment need to be replaced in that fiscal year. In this budget, we did a couple different consolidations, and I know a number of people identified the office supplies consolidation in their questions. Because of the way we're moving into new building, with the new building, we have we're consolidating services and departments in the city offices building. So we're consolidating the office supplies for those areas into one location. And it didn't make sense to have 5 different budgets have office supplies in the city offices, and we fight over whose pen that is and who bought that ream of paper and who's using it. So we've consolidated it. We've moved everything in. The city offices is now in the administration budget. In the city services building, all office supplies are in the community development budget. And then that'll be one place they'll be purchased and they'll be spent out of. In the R&M equipment line, years ago, we made a change, and it caused a lot of confusion. And a previous employee of mine is one who made the change, and it made kind of sense at the time, but over time it went, why are we doing it this way? And that is our lease payments on our copiers were all consolidated under information services. But the per copy charges for each department were in their budgets. And I think the concept at the time was people then can manage how many copies they use, how many color versus black and white, and kind of have a way to manage that. Well, we've gotten to the point where things are pretty well managed as far as that part is. So it didn't make sense to have two different pieces of the expenditure for copiers in two different places, and actually multiple places on the copy side. So we consolidated all those copy charge line items into the IS budget as well in this budget. So you'll see a lot of reductions and a big jump in the IS budget under R&M equipment. The transfers into utility operating funds, these are from development funds. So if there's a project that has a portion that's SDC eligible, system development charge eligible, that is that a portion of the funding is coming from that fund. We do the whole project in the operating fund and then just transfer that portion that is SDC eligible from the development fund into the operating fund. So you'll see some of that activity, and that's across all those utility funds. That's what those are related to. And then I'm going to go into a little bit more on interest earnings and utility rate revenues. And those again are consistent. There's a consistency across all the funds that this impacts. And the interest earnings was one that was asked a number of times as well, because we are seeing a significant decrease in our interest earnings revenue. And this, I want to just explain a little bit why. So a year ago, when we were putting together the 2021 budget, in Q3 of fiscal year 20, you can see we have three different sets of investments that we have our idle funds in. The red line here is our state investment pool, and we have the largest percentage of our investment is in the state pool. And then we have diversified, so our bond proceeds is, we invest those through an investment advisor. And then we have a portion of the remaining portion of our city idle funds that also is with the investment advisor. So you can see that a year ago, we were sitting here earning about 2.154% in our core funds, in the bond proceeds, but a little over 1.85%. And in the state pool, we were earning 2%. So, you know, about 2% across all our funds. Now, a year later, we're earning 0.6% in the pool, 1.265 in our core, and our bond proceeds are earning 1.538%, a significant decrease. And we don't see in the upcoming fiscal year that we're going to see a huge increase in those funds. I don't think we're going to see it drop much more than what we're at right now. Those two, the core and the bond proceeds, those will drop a little bit because some of those investments are maturing. The investments that are maturing in the next 6 months, year or so are at higher interest rates than what we'll be able to reinvest them in. So those yields will come down a little bit. We anticipate that things won't drop. We might see a slight increase, but I advise all the departments to budget, I believe it was a 0.6 or 0.5% for all those idle funds. So that's why you see those budgets decreasing significantly from last year's budget. And then on the utility rates. So you'll recall that last year, City Clean Water Services and the city did not raise sewer or stormwater fees rates throughout the whole year. We did raise last July, the city council raised the water rates as well as the road maintenance fee. Sewer and stormwater, just as a refresher, are made up of two components. There is a regional rate that is set by Clean Water Services. We collect it for them. They set the rate, we collect it, we pass it on to them monthly. And then there's the city side, the local rate, which the city council approves. The water rate, the rates that we're going to propose through the city council next month is to continue the 4.25% rate increase that is part of the water master plan for water, and that's the same rate that's been that has raised the last few years. On the sewer side, there is an increase on Clean Water Services based upon the fact that they did not raise their rates during 2021 fiscal year. Their rate increase is a little bit higher than they would have proposed, but theirs is a 4.5% increase. The city would have last year proposed a 15% rate increase on sewer. We did not have to change that assumption because of not doing it last year, but this year will be again the 15%, or you see about $1.43 or 53 for the sewer side on the local rate. On the stormwater side, again, Clean Water's rate increase is a 5.19%, which is a little bit higher than they would have if they had done a rate increase in 2021. The city side is still the same at 4% increase or 32 cents. And then the road utility is a indexed rate increase based upon a three-pronged indexing that actually comes from the county, what they use for their transportation development tax. Because it's road related, we determined a couple years ago that that was a good index to use on the city side as well. And so that's a 3.824% increase effective July 1. So all those rates built into this average residential utility account, and including the new $5 per month parks utility fee that the council passed last month, the average residential utility bill will increase about $10.36 in the upcoming year. You'll see that across all those utility funds, the water, sewer, stormwater, road utility. You'll see all those increases are built into those revenue budgets. As far as capital outlay goes, this is intermixed between the different funds. So the general fund, we do a prioritization process. We have a committee that's made up of representatives from all different departments. Meet annually. Kelsey Lewis, I see her on this call. She coordinates that group, does very well. The group comes together. They talk about the capital needs in the general fund and prioritizes them. That's a great interdepartmental group and talks through what the different priorities are, not only in their area, but organizationally. And then decisions are made with what's best organizationally for the monies we do have available in the general fund for capital purchases. This year, there are some vehicle replacements in the police department, in the engineering budget, as well as parks maintenance. The information services department is replacing the storage array network. And if you think that listening to budget talk for the next 45 minutes or so, I could turn you on to Bates and have him talk about storage array networks. So just be thankful that all I'm saying is we're replacing that and we're going to continue forward. Bates gives me a hard time about my budget talk, so I'll give him a hard time about his IS talk. A couple other projects that are budgeted this year is the Vets Memorial site, the design work on the Vets Memorial site, and then the Pole Center partition wall fabric replacement. There's also the Stone Ridge Park design is also being budgeted this year. And in our utility funds, in the water fund, so the top 6 items there are all capital projects in the water fund. The bottom line there is 65th Avenue, Nyberg Lane. Of course, there's the sewer trunk line. So these are capital items that come out of the CIP discussions, out of our master plans, and are budgeted into the utility fund capital outlay. Again, here, the top 4 here are water quality items in the stormwater operating fund. And then the bottom 2 are in the road operating fund, the Herman Road widening design for the Tualatin Road to Teton section, and then Borland Road improvement project construction. That project will start in this fiscal year as well. So now I'll go into some more of the detail of the different budgets. So as I said, I'm going to start with revenues first. You'll find this in your section of your budget binder. It's pages 63 to 84. And again, I won't go through every individual page. I'm just going to highlight the ones that I felt were significant changes that I thought would be of interest to you all. If you have a question about anything that I don't go over, let me know. When I get to the end of the revenue section, I'll take a pause there. So if you have something, then we can answer them at that point, or feel free to speak up. Since I can't see all of you, if you're not on my screen, speak up and go ahead and ask the question as we go along as well. So I'm going to start with the general fund, starting on page 63. And last meeting, I put this chart up. And this, to me, looks like a wonderful, nice, colorful, just a beautiful looking chart. And as I sat there last time, tried to, in my mind, it's like, this is so easy to explain. And I found myself last meeting trying to explain this and thought, okay, why did I do this? This is how I felt when I was trying to explain that chart. So in order to kind of talk through the differences in our property tax revenue, I'm going to give you a more simplified chart. The red line there is our assessed value, and that's what we collect property tax revenue on, is the assessed value of the property, not the market value. If you look at the property tax revenue that we have between the 2021 adopted budget and the 21-22 proposed budget, there's two factors that go into that. One is my assumption for AV growth in the upcoming year. The second is how much more the actual assessed value came in when they certified the rolls in the fall from what I projected last year. We projected a 4.5% increase. It came in at 4.55%. So it is a little bit higher. And so we already have that percentage increase built in that's above the adopted last year. But the second piece is then our assumptions. And I'm going conservative this year. You can see that since 2013-14, we have been over, almost 4% up to the high of about 6%. We had development occurring and some fairly big projects happening. So we had some significant growth in assessed value. The development has not been as large based upon, of course, the pandemic and some projects not being put on hold and some of them kind of going to be spread out a little bit longer. The other piece, and if you look at 11-12 and 12-13 here, our assessed value growth was 1.12 and 1.95%. Now, some people say, well, wait a minute, I thought under Measure 50, properties went up 3%. And in the residential and some others, that is a true statement. Another piece of the puzzle of our property tax assessed value is the personal equipment or the property in our industrial customers. As they reinvest in their equipment, the value of the equipment goes up, we get higher property tax revenue. But when they're not reinvesting and their equipment is depreciating, the value of that goes down. Well, coming out of the last recession, we were not seeing the redevelop or the reinvestment of the equipment. And so we were seeing drops of our AV. Now, I don't think that that's occurring right now. But because I don't have any way to track that, the state assesses that property and they don't even turn that over to the county until right before the county certifies the rolls. So I can't even call Washington County and say, what do you think? What do you see happening? The state won't tell me if I call them. So I'm going to hedge that maybe there's a little bit of that. I'm going to go with a conservative 3% assessed value growth in the upcoming year. My gut tells me it's going to be at least 3.5, but I'm going to go conservative. And what you see built in is a 3% growth of AV, plus I said that little bit of growth from last year that was higher than what we had projected in the budget for 2021. So that's a lot better than this chart, right? Hopefully. Property taxes, I could talk, and some of you have been bored by me. I could talk for the next hour just on property taxes, maybe some other time. It is near and dear to my heart, but I will save you from that this evening. So next, I'm going to franchise fees. You'll notice that the total amount of franchise fees is not projected to go up. I mean, about $100,000. So not significantly when you're talking about $2.3, $2.4 million. But this was where the shift goes. You'll see that the franchise fee line's going down, but our right-of-way fee line is going up. Two components of that right-of-way fee increase. One is Northwest Natural Gas has gone from paying under a franchise fee agreement to under our right-of-way ordinance. And so it's accounted for in that right-of-way fees line. The other increase in this category is some of those entities or some of those companies that are in our right-of-way that we had not realized had sites in our right-of-way that now we've identified them and we are collecting right-of-way fees from them. So Public Works is doing a good job of identifying more of those. So we're having more people pay than we had before because we didn't know they were there and they weren't telling us they were there. The next item here, you'll see some decreases, and this is in our erosion control permits and fees. We set these fees a couple of years ago, separate from what Clean Water Services did. We kind of separated apart from their process. And so even in the adopted 2021, it was kind of let's kind of wait and see what the activity is in these line items. Plus then just with development being down a little bit, so the number of erosion control related type projects is lower than we had in past years. So that's the reason, those are the two reasons why you're seeing the decrease in this line item, or these two line items. Another item on page 63 is our marijuana tax revenue. And I briefly mentioned this in the last meeting. I want to go into a little more detail and show you the impacts of this on us, but also statewide. So previous to Measure 110 being passed in November, the marijuana tax revenues from the state tax revenues were allocated out amongst these 6 categories. 40% went to the state school fund, 20% to mental health, state police got 15% of that net revenues, cities and counties each got 10%, and then the Oregon Health Authority got 5%. In Measure 110 created some addiction recovery programs and took the funding for those programs came from marijuana tax revenues. So it capped the allocation to these 6 entities or areas at $11.25 million per quarter. And it stays at that across, no matter how much revenues go up or down, our revenue will stay as an allocation of that 11.25 million. OHA just came out with their most recent estimate of marijuana tax revenues across the state at $339.4 million for the 21-23 biennium, or about $169.7 million annually. So taking those numbers and stripping that out, now 73.5% of that $169.7 million goes to the addiction recovery centers. Then the rest of that goes to these 6 areas. So our city's share went from 10% of that whole amount of 169 million to 2.65%. So this is a 73.5% decrease in marijuana tax revenues to all these areas that were funded under or had an allocation. We're seeing about a $60,000 reduction in marijuana tax revenues based upon this passage. You can see across, the state school fund went from 40% of revenues down to 10.61%. So it's a significant reduction across all these areas, and it's at about a $60,000 hit for us. And that amount will not change going forward because that's a set amount. Going on to page 64, in general fund revenues, the 2 items here, the passport execution fee and fingerprint fees. One of the questions came up that, since once we close the buildings to the public, obviously we're not processing passports any longer. We're not providing fingerprint services to the public. So the question was, well, if we're not doing those services, why are there revenues and fingerprint fees? We anticipate that the buildings will reopen at some point and that service will start back up. And so that's why there are some revenues projected in that line item. It's a swag. It's not, because we're not sure when that service will come up, but we anticipate that sometime during the fiscal year, fingerprint services will be provided again. So we do have some budgeted numbers. Passports, though we did make the determination that it's not a core service, we had other city needs for those resources that we put towards processing passports. We've reallocated those to other areas, and we made the decision not to continue as a passport acceptance agency, even when the buildings reopen. Therefore, there are no dollars budgeted in the passport execution fee line. Library fines, cards, and books. Question did come up here. We've mentioned before that in the last meeting that the library system has gone fine-free for overdue items. So the question was, if we're not collecting library fines, why is there revenue in this line item? The line item here, it's not everything in this was related to fines. While we don't charge a fine on a late return, if you don't return, you lose something, there still is a charge for the lost item. So those items are in this line item. as well as public printing and copying from the public computers in the library. There is a charge for that, and it's included in this line item as well. Another item that you'll see some reductions is in our sponsorships and special events, or basically our sponsorship lines on page 64. This is based upon the timing of when the sponsorships get done and paid for, as well as really the unknown levels when the budget was put together of the sponsorships and the size of the events. We weren't sure at the time what the size of the events were going to be, and it's hard to get full sponsorships if your event's not the same as it's been in the past. So Parks and Rec made the decision to lower the projections on those line items. They are going out and securing sponsorships, so we're hopeful that that will go up, but that's the reason for the decrease. And it does look like the middle there, it is not the witness protection program. There's the trees there. Any of our sponsors are not in the witness protection program between the word sponsorship and opportunities. I just took last year's picture and blocked out the 2020. So I let Julie know that it is not the witness protection program. It's just based upon that. I didn't want to say 2020. Road operating funds. So let's turn to page 68. And this is where the gas tax funds are. ODOT did lowered their projection before we did the budget last year based upon the pandemic estimation of less travel. So the 2021 budgeted amount is lowered amount from ODOT for the pandemic. We are seeing more travel, and so you are seeing the gas tax increase on that line item based upon more travel, more gas being projected to be purchased. I found this graphic that the gas tax was created in 1919 in Oregon. ODOT was created in 1913 with the slogan, "Get Oregon out of the mud." They passed a gas tax in 1919 at 1 cent per gallon. It was the first such law in the nation. We led the way on gas tax law. The federal gas tax was not put into place until 1932 with a temporary 1 cent gas tax, which was then extended to 1.5 cents in 1933. And interestingly enough, in 1934, when Prohibition ended, they put the gas tax back down to 1 cent per gallon because they could start taxing booze again. And therefore, they didn't need as much revenue from gas tax because they could tax booze. And then it's gone up. There's not been a federal gas tax increase since 1993, though there is some talk about that in Washington now, whether or not we'll see a federal gas tax increase or not. But there's a little bit of a gas tax history, because otherwise all I say is we're getting gas tax money, it's going up, and that seems kind of boring. On page 71 is our newly created Parks Utility Fund. The revenue for this is where the $5 per month fee will be recorded. The estimation is $676,440 annually that will go towards parks improvements under this ordinance and this fee. Going to page 73, the GO bond fund, or general obligation bond fund, you'll see that the amount of the revenue goes up. And I wanted to try to explain a little bit of how that gets factored in, or how that gets allocated and budgeted. The general obligation bond we have outstanding is a 2018 transportation bond. We did have an outstanding library bond and an outstanding parks bond at the same time, which we refunded for basically, so there's another word I'm looking for. It's like when you do your loan, redo your loan and your mortgage. Anyway, we refunded those. We got better rates. That's all wrapped into. So we have one bond issue outstanding, which is the 2018 bond. We set the structure of that bond is to stay at what's called a level levy rate. So we wanted to keep our levy rate at about 59 cents per thousand. And so we see our assessed value go up each year. And then you'll see on the red line, there's the debt service amounts. Those amounts increase every year based upon the projected AV growth we have in order to keep that levy rate down to 59 cents. You'll see it was at 60 cents back in fiscal year 19, and then you see the big drop. The police facility, we had an outstanding bond. The first year we sold the transportation bonds, we had another year left on the police facility bond. When that got paid off, that's when you saw the drop down. We got down to about 58 cents. Now we're staying steady, projected stay steady at about 59 cents. As AV growth goes, as that continues at a higher, the higher that goes, that we end up with a lower levy rate, because we just tell the county we need to levy this amount of money, and they figure out what that rate needs to be to collect the amount of money we need for debt service. Moving on to page 77 in our water operating fund. This is one of the areas that when I talked about, you'll see the impacts of the rate increases. You see a rate increase factored into the revenues here, but there's another component that I wanted to point out and talk about, and I think I briefly mentioned this at last meeting, and that's our water consumption. When we put the budget together last year, we were seeing a trend of our water consumption levels decreasing. What we are seeing, though, since then is we are actually seeing that trend reverse, and we are seeing an increase in consumption. And so the first quarter of the fiscal year, which is our summer months, you can see back in 1920, we were just over about 700,000 units of water. And we shot up in the first year in 2021, we gained about 100,000 units of in that quarter. And you see every quarter since then, in the second and third quarters of the year, we are seeing an upward trend from the previous year. And I anticipate again in fourth quarter, we'll see the same thing. Part of that, I'm sure, and if I grilled Terrence Leahy, from our water division manager, on this, he would tell you that I'm guessing he would say the same thing, as more people are home, they're using more water. Last summer, people were probably watering their lawns more and their landscaping more, being home than had they been. And then we were having probably a little bit in a warmer weather. So we are seeing that trend change, an upward trend of consumption. So that's the other part of that revenue increase that you see in that budget. The enterprise bond fund, page 83, is the last revenue that I'll talk about, and then I'll take a quick second to see if there's any questions on revenues. So the enterprise bond fund is where we record 3 different financings that we have outstanding right now. In 2005, we sold water revenue bonds, and we refunded or refinanced those in 2014 to get a better rate. And then we've taken out 2 loans for facilities. Those are backed by our full faith and credit of the city. The warehouse facility, we took out a loan in 2013, and then we took out the loan for the other half of the Tualatin City Services building this last year. So those 3 financings are funded out of this fund, but they are paid for by the functions that utilize those facilities. So the water funds, the utility funds, you see the general fund has a transfer in now. That is the general fund portion of the Tualatin City Services building. And so these are all the different funds that pay into that, so we could pay that debt service on those 3 financings. In 2021, for the city services building loan, there were assumptions of the debt service because we had not sold it yet or had gone out and taken that loan. We got a really good interest rate. I believe it was a 1.67% interest rate on that money. We were very pleased with our credit worthiness, and the bank that loaned us the money gave us an outstanding rate. And so you'll see there's the differences are now the proposed 21-22 are actual debt service amounts needed for all 3 of those funds. So that's where the revenue comes in and what it's for on the expenditure side. At that, I'll stop sharing real quick to see if I see anybody that has any questions so far. Councilor Pratt.
Hi, under the general fund in licenses and permits, there's a line for police services, and it had a nice amount, 182,000 last year, and this year it has 0. So I just wondered what that was, and why it went away.
Good catch, and I don't know why I didn't point that out. So that is, we had an officer that was assigned to the Tri-Met Transit Police Force, and we got funding for that position back. Tri-Met paid us back plus an admin fee. We no longer have that position allocated to that police, that transit force. Therefore, we're not paying that part. They're not paying us back for it either. Good catch. Thank you. I don't see any other hands raising or anything, so I'll start sharing my screen again and we'll continue on to expenditures. And these are, the expenditure section is 86 to 181. Oop. Go forward. Okay. I'm going to start out going through these funds first, the building, and this is the order. Again, if you look on the expenditure column there to the right, I stayed in order of the binder. I will have to go back when we get to the general fund portion, and we'll go back in the binder because it's the binder set up with some of the categories are split. There are non-general fund and general fund budgets in those sections. It was easier, I thought, to go this way in order, and then we'll jump back and hit the general fund programs. So we'll start with the building fund on page 119. Give you a second to get to that portion. So in the building fund, the material and services is pretty status quo. The one change you will see is in the dollar wise, it's not, there's a little bit of a bump, but that's because we had one promotion. Building Inspector 1, one of our building inspectors was in a Building Inspector 1 position. He spent the last year plus completing additional certifications. And so now he is able to do additional inspections that he was not able to do before, which saves us a lot of time and having to do inspections in other ways. And so he was then promoted to a Building Inspector 2. So part of the increase in that line item in the salaries and wages full-time is that promotion from and the reclass from the Building 1, Inspector 1 to Building Inspector 2. There's not a change in FTE in the department, just that one shift in positions. Now I'm going to jump you all the way to page 137, just because I didn't see anything exciting in between those two pages. Or maybe I did, I'll come back to them later. The Parks Utility Fee Fund, this is the expenditure side of it. We have one project that we'll be looking to take care of this year, and that is in Browns Ferry Park, the pedestrian bridge. We've had to close that off. You see the closed sign here. That's been closed for a while because of the condition of that pedestrian bridge, and we'll be able to utilize the funding from this this new utility fee to fix that pedestrian bridge in the upcoming year. And then the rest will be set aside. The rest of the funding in that will be set aside as we identify and prioritize which projects will be best for the remaining parts of those funds, and then going into the next few years as well. Bumping a few pages ahead into the Water Operating Fund. There's two items. There's three line items, but two are kind of related that I want to point out. The Tualatin Valley Water District, TVWD, the joint line, and then the Washington County supply line. We pay for our share of maintenance on these systems through either Portland billing us through Tualatin Valley Water District, or Tualatin Valley Water District doing the work and billing us for it. And this is part of the Washington County supply line, which is where our water coming from Portland and the Bull Run watershed comes to us, across the rivers, and then comes through what's called the Washington County supply line into Tualatin. So there are projected increases And TVWD is anticipating higher costs based upon older infrastructure in their joint line. And then they are more accurately covering their costs in the Washington County supply line and the things that get billed under that. So we're being told to project higher billings in those areas. And so those line items have increased in the upcoming year. The contract R&M systems line, the decrease there is a valve turning machine and the consultants related to that project, which we thought were going to be done in this fiscal year. It ended up being that project is something we're going to put off. And so we're not going to budget in 21-22 for that, the consultant to come and help us with the purchase of a valve turning machine. And the best I could see, that's a picture of whether that's the one we would get or not. That is a valve turning machine picture. Terrence, nod your head if that's kind of what you're looking at. All right, so that's what we're looking to get. That we have a consultant to tell us how to use that, how to turn those lights on to show us that we're doing it right. It's quite a fancy machine. It will save us a lot of time and energy, but it's just not something we will be doing until probably 22-23. So you see a reduction in that line item. Jumping into the sewer operating fund on page 156, the user charges CWS or Clean Water Services line. So when I talked about all the revenue increases for all the utilities, because we just pass through the revenue to Clean Water Services that we collect for them, the expenditure line, user charges CWS, is where we take all those revenues we've collected and we pay that out to Clean Water. So that's what that line item is. And you see that increase there is based upon the rate increase that Clean Water Services is proposing effective July 1. Stormwater operating fund onto page 162. The big change in this fund is the contract repair and maintenance or R&M of the systems. And this is the portion of our street sweeping contract that's paid out of stormwater operating fund. The street sweeper contract is split between the stormwater operating fund and the road operating fund. And this is the line item in the stormwater fund that this is budgeted in. We are anticipating in the new contract some projected increases in that contract, and those are built into this budget. The map you see here, if you want to spend a little more time looking at it, is on the city's website, and this is the schedule of the street sweeping. So Monday through Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Yeah, so those are the days of the different weeks of the month, and you can see where your area will be swept, or if there's other parts of the city you want to know when the street sweeper will be coming through there. That's a calendar and a schedule that's on our website. Page 169, we get into the road utility fee fund. This is where our pavement maintenance program is funded out of. So the portion of the road utility fee that goes towards pavement maintenance is in the repair and maintenance streets line item. We have about $1 million or so program this upcoming year, and that's the overlay portions of 115th Avenue, Dogwood Street, 105th Avenue, and Borland Road. And you can see the blue lines on this map are the areas that are the overlay program that's part of the 2021 pavement maintenance program. And that line item goes up and down depending on which streets we need to do, either slurry seal, overlay, the types of maintenance. The public works, the street crews, so Bert and his crew use our street saver program, go out and do visual inspections of the roads to determine which roads need to go into the pavement maintenance program the next year, and then those get funded. So this is one of those funds you'll see up and down expenditure years based upon which streets need which type of process on them to keep them in the working order and in the highly maintained roads that we have around Tualatin, thanks to Bert and his crews. The next, we'll jump to page 177. This is the Transportation Project Fund. This is where the Tualatin Moving Forward program is funded out of from the bond funds. There was a question of the amount of, or the fund balance, how that changes and the significant changes in that fund. You will see each year that the fund balance changes will always be, the fund balance will always decrease going forward because we have collected all the bond revenue. When we sold the bonds, we have all that money in. So now as we do projects, the expenditure side will be drawing down those funds. So we have about a little over $5 million of projects this year. So you're going to see the fund balance decrease about $5 million as those projects get completed, and that draws down on the fund balance. These are the projects that are programmed into the budget, into the 12th and moving forward program for fiscal year 21-22. Some big projects, Garden Corner Curves, I believe, will be completed this year. The Martinazzi Sagard Signal, that's a pretty big project that will be started this next year, as well as the 12th and Sherwood Road, Martinazzi to I-5 is another big project. And then a number of projects that are still big projects, but somewhat smaller. And then, of course, the crossings, the safe crossings, sidewalk repairs out on Highway 99, Pony Ridge to 124th. A lot of great programs, a lot of things being done in the neighborhood, a lot of great work being done under this bond program. And it's been a very successful bond program for us. And Jeff and Kelsey and Kim and the rest of them and all the people that work on this program do an outstanding job of keeping that going, keeping it moving forward, somewhat pun intended. Page 181 is our 12th and City Services Building Fund. You see there are some funds in there. The building is substantially complete. Now we do have some staff in there, but there are some pieces that will still need to be completed. Some matters that will happen likely after the 1st of July, as well as just finalizing the makerspace process that's part of this fund as well, and the city offices remodel. So just taking care of some of those last little bits and pieces. We are excited. I'm going to put you on the spot again, Jerry Ann. I understand the next few weeks or so that makerspace should be completed. I see thumbs up there. I need to get in and see the progress now. This is a program, a project that I know Jerry Ann and her staff and everybody involved in the STEAM education and our mobile makerspace has been excited about. But this is another project that I've had a lot of excitement to see, just seeing the plans for it, and then being happy that we're able to get the funding and get this going sooner rather than later. So when the library opens, make sure you get in there and take a look at it. It's going to be a great addition to our library. The debt service funds, this is pages 185 and 187 in the debt service section of the budget. This is where all the debt service, the principal and interest payments are recorded. Again, in the GO bond fund, the general obligation bond fund is where our transportation bond is, and where it'll say just the 2018 transportation line items there. That is the one bond we sold for the transportation bond program, as well as that refunding or refinancing of the parks and library bonds that we sold in 2018. And then talked a minute ago about the enterprise bond fund, and that, as I said, was the water bonds that were outstanding that we refinanced, as well as the loans for the warehouse that you see in the picture here, as well as, if I go back one, the 12th and City Services building, right next to each other. Some really great facilities that we're able to get constructed. And Clay Reynolds, I'll call Clay out on managing both these projects and getting these constructed. I know we had some other help, so there's other people that worked on that, but kudos to Clay. These are two outstanding buildings, and a lot of work, and a lot of his blood, sweat, tears, and probably some of his hair went to during these projects. And we have two outstanding buildings based upon the financing we were able to get and the project management for those. So those are the other funds that we've talked about. And now we'll start getting into the general fund. So we will go in order. These are the funds in numerical order. Again, not all these budgets have items that I'll point out. Either stop me along the way or save them when we get done with these. Feel free to ask any questions of anything I may have missed. It said these are in the order that they are found in the budget. So I didn't have anything particular in the city council or the administration budgets that we hadn't already talked about earlier in the evening. So I'll start in a finance budget on page 94. And the reduction in the consultants line item is we implemented this year a software system called Caseware, which is our budget book software. So the budget book you have in front of you this year was done in this new software, Caseware. And Lisa Thorpe on my staff and Matt Warner on my staff did an outstanding job of implementing the software to get this binder to you and how it looks. I think it looks, again, it's just another year that, in my opinion, and maybe I'm a little biased, but I think we have a fabulous looking budget document and one that we're very proud of. And so bringing this software package on board just will add the ability to do some other things that we weren't able to do before, or was a very laborious process. Questica is the software that we use for our budgeting. So all the departments put their budgets in Questica, and that's where all our budget work is done. Caseware, Questica goes right into Caseware. And so the interface works out very nicely. I'll just give one quick example. We had recently, as I was finalizing the budget, I had one number change that I said, okay, I need to change this number. In the past, what would have happened is I would have put the number into Questica. I would have let Matt know that this number was changed. He would have had to gone through some gyrations to rerun some reports, recreate PDFs, get them to Lisa. She'd then replace the PDF in the InDesign system we were using before. And then we'd have to make sure we hit every possible place that number may have changed something. That was probably one number change, probably took at least a minimum of an hour amount of time just to make that one change. Now we put it into Questica within about few minutes. It's in all the different places. We don't have to reprint any PDFs. All the schedules are redone and we can just print straight from there. So it's saved us a lot of time. The consultant line item was the implementation of that. Also in the finance budget, you'll see a shift. So two new line items, the economic development expense and advertising informational. These are items that were previously budgeted. So in 2021 in the community development budget, when economic development was in community development. And this last year, Jonathan Taylor in the economic development program has been moved over into the finance department. And so we had these amounts budgeted for tourism, marketing, and recovery, some things that we want to do in post-pandemic to help with the tourism marketing and some tourism recovery. And so that's what this $30,000 is. That's the increase in the finance budget. And you'll have seen that it was just a decrease of the same exact amounts in the community development budget. Moving on to legal. You'll see a reduction in the salaries and wages full timeline. That is not contrary to popular belief. It is not that Sean Brady has gone part-time. He is a full-time employee. Chief, he is full-time, by the way. He had his legal assistant left until that position is turning over. And so it's one of those positions where likely will come in at a lower step, and so the overall cost will be less. That's why the line item is decreasing, not that we're cutting Sean's salary or cutting back his hours. Moving on to page 101 in information services. There are a couple different line items here that I want to call out. You'll notice in the salaries on call line that it went from $5,200 down to $0. And that was a reclass of the employee that was subject to those on-call salary line items. He has been reclassed, and so no longer getting on-call dollars, but he's been reclassed to a different position that is not part of that on-call dollar program. The computer equipment and software, the two big pieces, there's an increase in here for the police department replacement printers. So in the police cars, they have these printers to prints out the citations that they write. Those are now getting end of life, and so we're replacing all those printers. That's included in the budget. And then last year we had dollars in there for the moving our Outlook email service onto the Exchange and going out to Exchange and being part of the cloud, Office 365. And that process was in 2021, and they're not budgeted this year. So that's the other part of that change in that line item. On the consultants line, we are doing some phishing training. So that's the difference in that line item. And I figured we need to be a little interactive. So quiz time. You might have to pull yourself off mute if you want to answer these questions. The first is, what is phishing? Anybody, not you, Bates, but anybody else? I'll help you out here. So phishing is a fraudulent practice of sending emails that poses a company, a brand, a person that you recognize that'll be asking for personal information. Things that we're getting recently, I just got one earlier today that the mayor asked me to go out and buy a bunch of gift cards for committees he wanted, and he was busy. Well, if you look at the email, it might be under his name, but it truly wasn't from him. The one I got today, it was interesting. And usually you see these, that the subject or the name might be Frank Bubenik, but if you look at the email address, it has nothing to do with it. Today I got one that had the name from somebody else in the signature line in the email, but it actually had some real person's name as the name sending it to me. So whether that was a real name or not, but the guy really is not, that was not one of the smarter ones I've got. Anyway, back to our quiz. It's called phishing because fraudsters are out there fishing for your information. Anybody know what then, if that's phishing, what is vishing? Nobody. No, look, put your hand down, Bates.
I can jump in here and give the actual Google definition since I looked it up if you'd like, Don. But
oh no, that's cheating.
That's unfair. Yeah.
That's cheating, John. Good thing I'm not giving out presents or prizes for this. All right, well, I'll help you out here. Vishing, and John, you can see if this follows in what Google says. Vishing is voice plus phishing, so it's done over the phone, and often it's when people are posing as your bank and wanting your account number or personal information. All right, so if phishing is phishing for it and vishing is voice, what is smishing?
The attack.
Hey, all right, good job, Mayor. Yes, it is text, folk asking for your personal information or to call a number. So Bates was very happy when I told him I was doing this because, you know, this is his geekdom world, and he thinks it's really good that we pointing out the importance of not falling to these kinds of things. So there's your education piece for the evening. Moving on to page 105 and into maintenance services. There's a couple items here that I'll point out. So the non-routine project, the decrease in that line item was in the 2021 budget. We had dollars budgeted for the Equality and the Tualatin Community Park restrooms to heat those restrooms so we'd be able to keep them open during the winter. So that we're not rebudgeted, though later in the meeting tonight, I will ask you to carry those funds over because that project is not going to end up getting completed before the end of June. So that'll be carried over into next year. But there are dollars into the heat those restrooms to be able to keep those open during the winter months. Another line item that is increasing and just something to think about. So on October 2nd, it's National Custodial Workers Recognition Day. We'll have to keep that in mind as we honor our custodial services. We contract that service out, and there are additions in that line item. One is the contractual cost of living type increases in that contract. The second is we have additional square footage. Obviously, the building, we have a new building that's added about, I think it's Clay said, about 15,000 square feet of space to be cleaned over what we currently do. And so you'll see the increases in that line item. The other line that is actually a reduction is in the vehicle replacement fund contribution, or the vehicle replacement expense line item. That's because some of the vehicles that were being put together to fund into that fund are now in theory fully funded, so we can start soon buying vehicles out of that. And so the next vehicles that are the remaining vehicles on that schedule brought that down, that line item down in the upcoming year. Moving on to non-departmental, this is in pages 109 and 110. There are a few different items that I want to point out here. The first is you'll see the, I believe it's the economic development expense, or I don't have my line item in front of me, 958,000 in 2021 and 0 in 21-22. This was the COVID-19 business assistance program that we ran through the CARES Act. And so that was one-time programs that were done in 2021. That's why there's not a 21-22 budget. A couple initiatives that we are doing in 21-22 that are budgeted is the climate action plan, as well as the diversity, equity, inclusion consultant that we're hiring to look at our internal processes, programs, procedures. The climate action plan, we are budgeting the projected full amount in 21-22. If you look at this screen here, the picture about the draft timeline, it does go into the next fiscal year, but because we have not bid that out, and we have not awarded that, I'm going to go ahead and budget the projected amount, full amount in 21-22, and then we'll just carry over what carries over in the next year. There was a question about why there wasn't a goal in administration in 21-22 related to the climate action plan when it was a highlight in 2021. Admin started the process of looking at other climate action plans in 2021. That's why it's a highlight. But then it was transitioned over to Public Works to oversee the program and that RFP and so forth. And it's budgeted non-departmental, which is why the goal, you don't see the goal out there anywhere, but it's not in admin because admin's not doing the work any longer. So it's not a goal there. So that's the reason why it's not a goal in admin, and it's not in any of the other places except for in this budget. Also on 109, 110, the advertising city newsletter. This was a piece that I had initially said was part of the printing and postage. We are trying to meet some goals based upon our community surveys of where people get their information. And we do have you have the ability to subscribe to the digital newsletter of Tualatin Today. And we are looking to increase that. So we are going to do a special print edition of the newsletter during the year to try to get more people to sign up for the digital newsletter. So we're just trying to do a little bit of outreach to try to get that percent. We still have a pretty good percentage of people that subscribe, but we think that could be a little bit better. And we saw a little bit of a change from the last time we'd done the community survey. So we'll be doing a special print edition in this next year, and that's the increase in that line item. And then the transfer to park development that you see that line item there is the share of the splash pad project that is finishing up this summer. There was a state grant and a general fund contribution throughout this current year and next fiscal year. And so that amount that is in that line item is related to the remaining portion of the general fund transfer, because we only transfer what we've spent up to date. So the total amount went down because that's all that's left to transfer next year. Bumping ahead a few pages, or about 15 pages, let's get into the library budget. A couple different items here is the office equipment and furniture line item. That line item is dropping based upon the previous year had the public furniture replacement. That was in a phased project for the last few years. 2021 was the last year that we carried over some funds to finish the public furniture replacement. The collection development, you'll see that line is decreasing, and we are a lot of that is based upon that we have less space for our collection because of the makerspace classroom that is being built. We still have a very robust collection, but we're not replacing as much collection in the upcoming years, so you see a reduction in that line. And then the computer equipment and software line item, the increase there is replacing the coin/bill acceptors. So the public computers, you can pay to have things printed. So we have these coin and bill acceptors there to accept that, so you could, pay to print your document or the different types of things that we charge for there. Those acceptors are end of life and need to be replaced, and so that's programmed into the budget next year to replace those pieces of equipment. Let's jump ahead. It's about half a dozen pages, and in the Parks and Rec, there's a few different items here to point out. The first is you'll see some increases in the salaries and wages temporary line. And there's two reasons for this. The first is that the Park Ranger program, which has previously been budgeted out of the police department, is being transferred over to the Parks and Rec department. And so we are transferring then, as that program's moving over, the funding for those positions, which runs from Memorial Day to Labor Day, those are, the temporary dollars have been added to that budget. As well as in the 2021 budget, we reduced that line item knowing that we were not going to hire as much temporary staff during this last summer due to COVID, because we think that programs will be back to pretty close to normal. I mean, there's still a lot of up in the air about that, but we put those levels back up to the pre-pandemic levels in that line item in anticipation of having more programs and events this year. The other is the city contribution amount, the contribution to the Tualatin Crawfish Festival. And I found this photo looking at that. I don't know how many of you, I bet a number of you on this meeting knew Del Judy, may she rest in peace, was just a sweetheart of a lady, was involved in the Poll Center, many other activities, was a former member of our budget committee. This is a picture of Del Judy and Stan Pryor in the Crawfish Parade back in 1998. It warmed my heart to see Del when I saw this picture, and it just cracked me up because I could definitely picture Del on the back of this truck in this costume driving down the streets of Tualatin. So Del was missed and was a sweetheart of a person. But anyway, back to our line item there, the donations to other outside agencies has that contribution to the Crawfish Festival that is run by a third party in there. The other items in this is the increases for the summer programming and the concerts. Again, they were decreased this last year due to less activity due to COVID. We've increased those line items back up in anticipation of concerts happening this year, as well as the summer programming and youth items happening. Moving on to the police department, this is the last general fund budget that I have to talk about. There are three different items here that make up the big changes. One in the uniforms and safety equipment. This is the body worn camera program that is being implemented this next year. So that that line item has been increased for that purchase and that program. And then two items under the contract services. These are agreements that we will have in place with Washington County and two of the neighboring police entity agencies. One is to add an additional position in the Washington County Digital Forensics Laboratory to help with the number of pieces of evidence that are electronic related. And so they need assistance there. So some of our neighboring agencies and Tualatin are going in together to help fund an additional position there. And the last piece is the IGA with the county and the other, and I think it's Sherwood, Tigard, and King City, I believe, are the other agencies we're talking to with a mental health clinician that will partner up with a police officer, and that'll be in conjunction with Washington County's mental health response team that's in existence now. So those are two programs that we're excited that we'll be partnering up with and having agreements with the county and neighboring entities to increase some services that are sorely needed. At that, that is the extent of the pieces that I had on my list to present. I will stop sharing my screen for a little bit. I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions. If we have any members of the public, this would also be the opportunity for public comment. So, Madam Chair, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Don. So first of all, if there's any members of the public, can you either raise your hand if you know how to do that, or speak up so that we can call on you? Okay, hearing none and seeing none. Are there any questions or comments from anyone? Councilor Pratt?
I have two questions and one comment, of course. First, I wondered on the road utility fee. This is more of a curiosity thing, but with the ice storm last year, there was no increase. There was 150K for the road, the sidewalk tree program. And I'm wondering where that, I have to assume there's an additional cost to replace street trees because of the ice storm. So I'm wondering where that is covered. That's my first question.
Okay, so that is two pieces. So we have a tree for a fee program for residents to replace their trees. The expenditure portions for those, our costs for those trees are in the parks maintenance budget. And I could tell you which line item it is. And then the revenue part of it is we have a street tree revenue line item for that. And it is in the grounds and landscaping line in the parks maintenance program, or parks maintenance budget, is where the cost of those trees and all our expenses for that to replace those trees are included. And we did up that, and I do have a amendment that I'm proposing this evening to increase that line item a little bit more based upon the ice storm, and we anticipate more trees needing to be replaced.
Okay, and then my next question is, I kind of figured out these FTE changes, except parks maintenance, we lost, I think, 1.3. And is that something that will still cover the needs of the parks maintenance?
Pull that up here.
Well, I looked at, it's on that 225, 227 at the end.
So the parks maintenance stays the same. It's the total general fund that is decreasing.
I meant, the number of employees, isn't it?
Yeah, so the right underneath parks maintenance is the total general fund line, and that's decreasing from 134 to 132 plus. So the parks maintenance is 9 both years.
Oh, okay.
So that the decrease is the general fund as a whole. And that's a decrease of 1. Well, that's just a change. We had some shifts there. It's the library had a slight shift in FTE based upon some staffing changes they made. The police department, that one position that we didn't fill because of the TriMet, excuse me. And then there's the other pieces like 0.2 and 0.1 FTEs.
Yeah, that's fine.
You'll see in some of those budgets are based upon another change we made.
Okay, and then lastly, I just have a comment in the beginning, in the verbiage and the demographics on page 2. There's a phrase or statement that Tualatin remains an affordable place to locate a family, and I'm wondering if that still rings true for our community right now. And I don't know if that's for you to answer, Dawn, but I just wonder if that's appropriate.
Well, I will say we will look into that, and before we do the adopted budget, we'll see if there's any wording that needs to be changed on that. So Lisa, can you make a note of that? I see you on here somewhere. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for Don on the
I had a
budget?
quick question, hopefully. I was wondering on the transportation project fund, if I understand it correctly, there's a 5-year window to spend that money. Does it look like we're on track to spend that money?
My understanding is yes, and I will look, I'm looking at my screen here for either Kelsey or Jeff to confirm that we are on track to spend, if not all of it, a large percentage of it. One of the two of you. I see Jeff's not nodding his head. I need to change the screen here to see if Kelsey's nodding her head.
Is there any ramification if we don't spend the money?
No, not within the 5-year period. I mean, there are some things called arbitrage, and I won't get into the details of arbitrage, but we would be okay still. If we don't spend it all, we're still within legal rights of that.
Okay, thank you.
It's more just public trust, honestly, that we said that we would do the projects within 3 to 5 years. And so that was our commitment.
Mhm.
And we're back to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay,
I have,
yes,
it's Counselor Brooks. Hi. I'm not sure if this is the right place, but I have a question and I wanted to talk a little bit about the arts grants program. Is this an appropriate time for that? Okay.
Yeah.
I know that we've had a program, just so that other people know, to help arts agencies in our area and support our arts agencies in our area. We've had that grant at a level of $1,000 for I think about 10 years. And I'd like to propose increasing it to $2,000. And just so people know, we the Arts Committee had more applicants than it could fill last year, and has made a habit of usually giving that money to more than one agency. And I think that with the support we've given to businesses and other organizations, that would be helpful, especially in these times and during this particular time of need, to look at that. I just think it hasn't been looked at for a while. And anyway, so I'd like to propose an amendment of increasing it to 2,000.
So the best way to do that, I guess, would be to make a motion, and because it would need to be voted on by the committee.
Okay, I'm sorry.
do that.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the budget to raise from 1,000 to 2,000 for the agency grant from the arts.
is there a second?
I would second that.
Is there discussion? Cindy? Councilor Hillier?
Thank you, Chair Williams. I just wonder where the money then comes from, please.
I'm wondering, Dawn mentioned something in the beginning about the unallocated funds. I think it was like 400,000, and there was no discussion about it or no questions about how it would be used. Is that money up for use?
Are you talking about the state shared revenue portion of that?
Yes, I have a few ideas for it then.
Yeah. Well, so the state shared revenues, if that's the portion you're talking about, is already programmed into the budget for general operations. So it would be taking, if we were to utilize the monies from that, it would have to be taken from somewhere else. The $1,000 that is on the table to be added to the budget would just come from our unappropriated fund balances. of the general fund. And so there's sufficient funds to make it $1,000 adjustment. And you'll see I have a couple other unappropriated fund balance adjustments that I'll be proposing to make in a minute. So it would just come, it would come from our general unappropriated fund balances in the general fund.
Councillor Sacco, did you have a?
That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there, and are there any other questions or discussions? Oh,
I'm
yes.
sorry, I have a quick question. Is this art? I wasn't quite sure where, is this what is supported in the parks and what we're seeing around town, that there is art that's showing up, or are you proposing for something different? I'm just curious, Bridget.
The current grant is for agencies that serve the community of Tualatin. It goes through the Tualatin Arts Advisory Committee to appropriate that grant. Some of the cultural, we've granted to Broadway Rose, Mask and Mirror, SNA Irish Entertainment, Tualatin Valley Symphony, Willowbrook Arts Camp, Lumineer Players, Conti Enterprises, Wilsonville Stage. Those are just a few of the people, of the organizations that we have supported with this grant money that I think helps enrich the culture of our community.
Are there any additional questions? Then I would, this gets a little tricky because I can't really see everybody. So, but I guess, is there, all in favor want to say aye? Please.
It would probably,
Aye.
Sarah, it'd probably be best to do a roll call vote on that one. So because of the Zoom.
Okay, we will do that. Then I will begin with Mayor Bubenek.
Aye.
Councillor Reyes,
Yes.
Councillor Sacco,
Aye.
Councillor Brooks,
Aye.
Councillor Hillier,
Aye.
Councillor Pratt,
Aye.
Committee Member Broom,
Aye.
Committee Member Deal.
Aye.
Thank you. Committee Member Hannum,
Aye.
Committee Member Horsford,
Aye.
and Committee Member Valley.
Aye.
Okay, I think it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Are there any additional comments at this point in time? Okay, Doug.
I have
Yes.
one comment. I just want to say I appreciate you bringing that up. I think we sometimes forget about inflation. And I also want to say that for me, it was an easy vote because I think the city is so well managed and financially responsible that I'm really comfortable on the fly saying, sure, we should make that change. So just want to compliment Dawn and the team who's put this all budget together. From a CPA, it makes my little nerd heart really happy. So even though I didn't send you any questions, it's because I'm like, you guys have got this. So I just wanted to say that publicly. Just so you all know, I've done audits of many local governments and state agencies, and the city Tualatin is just amazingly well run. So in case you didn't know that, it's a really special place, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think we go back to you, Don.
Okay, I have a couple, I'm going to share my screen again because I do have some amendments that I want to propose this evening. So I'll talk through those, and then I think we would hopefully be ready for a motion to approve the budget tonight. So there are some carryovers that I actually have two different categories and one big ad. Two different categories. The first is carryovers in our proposed amendments tonight, and these are items that we thought.
Don, we just see your desktop.
Yeah, you're,
Oh, did I share the wrong? Let me try this again.
it was fun to see your desk.
That was a crazy desktop.
File management.
Is that better?
Yes.
I could have moved the other out of the way. Oh, you probably didn't see what I see on my desktop because I see all of you, or depending that I can see. Hey, well, okay, so that's the fun stuff I have on my desktop. But thank you for but anyway, back to our carryovers. So you can see carryovers now, right?
Yes.
Good. So these are items that were in the current year budget that we thought we were going to get completed before June 30th, and now as we see here today, realize that won't happen. So we need to carry them over into next year's budget. The first is in the Parks and Rec Arts program. We have a couple utility box wraps, those arts projects that aren't going to get done prior to June 30th. So we need to carry over about $3,935 for that. During the presentation, I mentioned the heating of the restrooms at Equality in Tualatin Community Park that we're not going to be able to get done. So there's $8,000 in the maintenance services budget to carry over. Two carryovers in the library. One is for a direct mail postcard, and the other in the office equipment and furniture line is a book display unit that we thought was going to get here before June 30th, and it's delayed and will not be here until after July 1st. And then 3 items in parks maintenance. The IBOC tennis court color coding is not going to get completed before June 30th. We need to carry that $15,000 over. We have some storm-related tree services, some cleanup work that still needs to be done that won't happen until after July 1st. So there's $40,000 that we'll need to carry over for that. And then we had a pretty big renovation programs or projects in the bathrooms at the commons, in the commons area there, as well as over at Tualatin Community Park. Those projects won't get completed. And so there's $110,000 that was budgeted this current fiscal year that we'll need to carry over, or we're asking to carry over into next year. The second category is some new items, new appropriations that have come up since. And so Councilor Pratt, this is where I was talking about the additional street tree replacements that we were projecting. So Tom Steiger asked to add more projected street trees to his budget from what we were already including. And so we're asking for $4,000 in the parks maintenance budget to be added for the cost. The revenue side of that is $8,750. And so we will increase the unappropriated fund balance by $4,750. Another item is in the Parks and Recreation area, the Keokuts Bridge and the floating docks. We need to do some inspections on those items to the tune of about $18,000. So we're asking that be added to the budget. $6,500 of that, we have a sharing agreement with other entities that we partnered in the construction of the Keokuts pedestrian bridge. And so those entities are in the cost sharing agreement. So they'll reimburse us $6,500 of that $18,000. And so you'll see the unappropriated fund balance, we're showing a decrease of $11,500 to cover that net difference. The third item is some really good news. In the insurance lines, we were initially told to project by our insurance agents a higher amount for insurance. They have come back to us and said that no, your billing is going to be about $48,000 less. And so we're asking to reduce that line item in the non-departmental by $48,000, which then increases our unappropriated fund balance by $48,000. The last item that we're asking to add to the budget this evening under this section is a grant, a state grant that we have received word of from the Oregon Community Paths Grant Program in the amount of $452,530. That is for the Highway 99, the Tualatin River Greenway Trail extension under Highway 99. We're projecting to spend $202,800 of that this year in 21-22. So we're asking to increase the revenues by the $452,530 grant, increase the project's professional services by $202,800 in the capital outlay area, and then the remaining $249,000 of that grant will go into the future year's project line item to be spent. What remaining parts of that project, which will be in 22, 23 and beyond. So I have those amendments in front of you this evening as well. The last amendments are related to the American Rescue Plan. So I mentioned that we are in line to receive some funding through the American Rescue Plan. We just got word this week, they finally released the entitlement or the guidance for the non-entitlement units of government. So those are entities that do not get direct funding of the community from the Community Development Block Grant Program, or the other groupings of cities and entities that are in this other under the entitlement are also metropolitan cities that are over 50,000. We fall into neither of those categories, so we're in the non-entitlement unit part of the program. So our funding will go through the state and then sent on to us. Anyway, we got the guidance this week, and the new projected number that we are now being projected to receive is $6,179,536.76. Let's not spend the 76 cents all in one place. We're projected to get half of that in June, the other half a year later. We are going to include this in a new fund. We're going to create a new fund for this program. So what I'm asking the committee to do this evening is to create this new fund, the American Rescue Plan Fund. Since we are anticipating receiving money in this June of about $3,089,770, that will be our beginning fund balance starting July 1 for the 21-22 budget. We will anticipate getting the remaining share in the federal grant revenue line item during the fiscal year. I'm going a guesstimate on the interest revenue side. So I'm asking to add $10,000 of a revenue budget. Because we will now, as we are getting this guidance and starting the discussions with entities around us and regionally and state to find out what programs are being offered, we're starting to get that put together, and we'll come to the city council here in the near future to have discussions about what we might want to spend that on. So this is a kind of a swag as far as, I'd like to put $3 million into a materials and services category that will then hopefully cover things that we might want to spend it on in the next fiscal year. We are asking the council to think long-term as well, not just upfront, be patient with a lot of the different programs that could be used for this funding. And then we'll put the remaining amounts in contingency. And then we can do budget adjustments with the council throughout the next year as those discussions continue to be had. So that's my other amendment this evening, is to create that fund and to set up these appropriations. Any questions on any of those three different sections?
I just have one question about the $6 million. I know everything is really up in the air right now with all these federal grant money going around. Is that sort of funding that we would consider potentially or would be available to give to like local businesses who've been really disrupted as a result of COVID, or individuals? Or is that more like community programming? Or do you have any idea?
I have not fully read through the full guidance yet, but yes, those are two items that would be eligible for use of these funds. So those are the types of programs that will be in front of the council to consider. If you're looking for some interesting reading, there's 151 pages of the interim guidance that's been put out. There are some shorter questions that frequently asked questions in other guidance documents, but the interim plan is 151 pages. So there's a lot of smarter people than I that have been reading through that I'm attending webinars on to get up to speed on a lot of this. But we will be in front of council. I don't have a date scheduled yet, but sometime in the near future for those council members that are on the call, the meeting here. But you will see me sometime soon. I just don't have it scheduled yet as we get through all the guidance and have those discussions with people around us.
So are there any further questions on either the carryover proposal, the new items, or creation of this new fund? So I'm just asking for advice, Don. Should we vote on these each separately?
No, we can just, so if we're ready to, I can put up the recommended motions. So I can talk through what this would be.
Okay.
This is the language that I would be asking to anybody that is ready to make a motion whenever they are ready to make this motion. And because we include the language as amended, I put into record the 3 items, those 3 slides, as into the record as the amendments that are being proposed, as well as the vote that we had for the additional $1,000 would be included as an amendment.
So I will entertain a motion for budget approval, if somebody would like to make that motion. And please state your name if you do make it, because I know I can't see anybody except about 4 people.
This is Chris Brune. I'm willing to read it.
Go ahead, please.
I move to approve the fiscal year 2021-2022 City of Tualatin budget as amended. The property taxes it contains at the rate of let me read it again, 2.2665 per $1,000 of assessed value for operating purposes, and the amount of $3,096,850 for payment of general obligation bond principal and interest.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second, please?
This is Valerie Pratt, second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded to approve the budget for fiscal year 2021-2022 as amended. So I will go through the list. Oh, excuse me. Is there any discussion? Further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Mayor Bubenik,
Aye.
Councilor Reyes,
Yes.
Councilor Sacco,
Aye.
Councilor Brooks,
Aye.
Councilor Hillier,
Aye.
Councilor Pratt,
Aye.
Committee Member Brune,
Aye.
Committee Member Deal,
Aye.
Committee Member Hannan,
Aye.
Committee Member Horsford.
Sorry. Aye.
Thank you. And Committee Member Valley,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So it has been passed unanimously.
Thank you. And we just have one more budget to approve this evening, if we can get that motion.
Thank you. So is there somebody who would like to move on the Tualatin Development Commission budget?
My name is Kelly Horsford, and I move to approve the fiscal year 2021-2022 Tualatin Development Commission budget.
Thank you, Kelly. Do I have a second?
This is
My name
Chris
is Maria
Brune.
Reyes, second.
I'm sorry, there's 2 people. Go ahead.
This is Chris Brune. I'll second it.
Thank you, Chris. Any discussion? Hearing none, it's been moved and seconded to approve the fiscal year 2021-2022 Tualatin Development Commission budget. Mayor Bubenik,
Aye.
Councilor Reyes,
Yes.
Councilor Sacco,
Aye.
Councilor Brooks,
Aye.
Councilor Hillier,
Aye.
Councilor Pratt,
Aye.
Committee Member Brune,
Aye.
Committee Member Deal,
Aye.
Committee Member Hannan,
Aye.
Committee Member Horsford,
Aye.
Committee Member Valley,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Any other business?
I just want to say thank you to the whole committee. I know this, we give you multiple 100 pages document to go through in a couple weeks and spend your time doing that, but it's definitely appreciated. This is a valuable part of our budget process, and the questions I get, I appreciate those. I think every year there's a lot of great questions. I did keep everybody the full time this year, so I apologize for that, but I figured, well, I get you out early every other year, so I'm going to make you stay the full time this year. But I will send out the cancellation for tomorrow night's meeting. And again, I just want to give a heartfelt thank you to all the staff that puts the number of hours into putting together this budget, my staff that puts the document together, all of you that spend the time then reviewing it, asking questions, asking really great questions and getting us through this process. So my heartfelt thank you to everybody that's involved in this.
Thank you. And I would
Thank
like
you,
to
Don,
thank
and the
you
city
for all
staff.
the
Thank
hard
you.
work and all the work of staff. This is my second year on the committee, and it certainly made a lot more sense to me the second time around. But I really do appreciate the work that's gone into it and the explanations that head up each section, make it a very readable document. So thank you, everyone. I do have one request, Don, if you would be kind enough to send us, at least the committee members, copies of the 3 slides that showed the amendments. I would appreciate that. Thank you. And hearing no further business, I will adjourn the meeting of the Budget Committee. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
It's kind of fun watching all these boxes go away.